Hello everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back. So in my last video I talked a little bit about Sarepta's plans for a gene therapy clinical trial in LGMD 2B and also went over a little bit of the discussion about LGMD that was in a quarterly earnings call that Sarepta had with their stock analysts. Now, there was another question having to do with LGMD that really deserves its own video, so that's why I'm making this one. And the question has to do with the state of clinical trial readiness for LGMDs. And this applies not only to Sarepta, but or gene therapy, but indeed any company that's developing any type of treatment for LGMD. How practical is it to know how to design a clinical trial, test their drug, so that if it works, it can be approved? So the question from the stock analyst is the following. Some key opinion leaders we have spoken with have emphasized that the natural history for LGMD is poorly defined and that there's a strong unmet need with the lack of trials as well as difficulty of conducting trials in this ultra-rare disease. Our question is if you could elaborate on this point and also on your conviction as it relates to Sarepta's entire LGMD portfolio. Okay, so that's there's quite a lot of stuff in there to unpack. So first, a strong unmet need, that's actually what a drug development company looks for. There's people with some disease who need a treatment and currently don't have one, which they're proposing to develop a drug to provide to the patients who have that disease. That's certainly the case for LGMD. Now, the other 2 points about the natural history study for LGMD is poorly defined, and the difficulty of conducting trials in this ultra-rare disease. So the fact that they're using the term ultra-rare is, in reference to it's hard to conduct a clinical trial if the number of patients is small. So this question was answered by Louise Rodino-Klepak, who's the Chief Scientific Officer of Sarepta and also the primary developer of the gene therapies, or most of the gene therapies that Sarepta is developing for different subtypes of LGMD. And she mentions that Sarepta is funding a natural history study on the 3 sarcoglycanopathies, 2D, 2E, and 2C, that they're developing gene therapy for. And that there also has been some prior natural history data collected in 2E, and also that for the case of dysferlinopathy, LGMD 2B, there's a large amount of natural history data. I'll go over the study that where that was collected. Now, on the question's last point about the difficulty of conducting clinical trials in diseases with small patient populations, there's a few different factors that actually enter into that. It depends on the number of people who have the disease clearly, but there's more to it than that. Not all of the people who have the disease will have a proper diagnosis. And for a therapy such as gene therapy, you really need to be diagnosed at the genetic level. Your mutations need to be known to often see whether you would qualify for the trial. Also, not all of the people, even if they're diagnosed, will be aware of the trial, or the people running the trial might know there are patients out there, but won't be able to get into contact with them to tell them about the trial and perhaps recruit them. So that's where disease registries are extremely important. And there's been a lot of work on that for different subtypes of LGMD. Beyond that, the people have to want to participate in the trial. Participating in a clinical trial is a big decision. There are risks. A lot of time you're making a major commitment. Not everyone might be prepared to do that, although there's really a lot of enthusiasm in the LGMD community towards participating in trials. And then trials always have specific inclusion criteria. You need to, have X, Y, and Z, and can't have, any of these exclusion criteria in order to be in the trial. Not everyone will qualify. So the LGMD community, particularly clinicians and scientists who are developing drugs, are aware of these issues. So there's been a number of recent workshops on either across LGMDs or on particular subtypes of LGMDs about natural history studies, as well as the general topic of clinical trial readiness. So this is a listing of some papers which have come out over the last few years on natural history of different types of LGMD. The first and last paper on this page are about LGMD 2I or R9. Then the second one is on sarcoglycanopathies. The third one is about dysferlinopathy, LGMD 2B-R2. That's actually a study which I participated in, and there's now a follow-up study currently going on to confirm the results of the first study. And just as a sense of the scale of that, involved about 200 patients in 16 clinical centers in 8 different countries. These are some of the current natural history studies that are listed on clinicaltrials.gov on different forms of LGMD. And you'll notice they're not all in the US. There's one in France, there's one in Norway, and I want to point out also that the last study is the study on the 3 sarcoglycanopathies that are in Sarepta's pipeline. This is the study that Dr. Readiness referenced in her answer to the question. And then I wanted to give a special mention to this study called GRASP, which is happening at a number of sites around the US as well as one in the UK. And it covers several subtypes of LGMD, including all of the types that are in Sarepta's pipeline. Now, as this question asked at the quarterly earnings call shows, the issue of clinical trial readiness is very important to both the pharma industry as well as investors who are investing in pharma and biotech. It's important that if someone is developing a drug, that they can actually get it approved, which revolves, among other things, around the state of clinical trial readiness for the disease. And so I wanted to sort of show that and share it with the LGMD community as an example of why things like getting a diagnosis, joining a disease registry, and participating, if you can, in a natural history study is very important, and why there's been so much attention to this.